Shabbat Shalom. In this week's Parsha, Parshat Chukat, we have the story of Bnei Israel asking permission to pass through the lands belonging to the kingdom of Edom, Edom being identified with Esav, so they're basically our cousins, not kissing cousins, more like feuding cousins. So we actually have jumped since the story of the spies about 38 years or so, and it's already the new generation that was brought up in the desert and is ready to go and stake our rightful claim to our homeland in the land of Israel. But we had to pass through some other countries to get there. One of them was Edom. And Israel sent a delegation to the king of Edom telling him all about all the hardships we've undergone for the generations in slavery in Egypt and going through the desert, and asking for permission to cross through directly on the king's highway, Derech HaMelech, on the main drag, not the king's highway, the royal road, promising not to veer to the left or to the right, not to intrude on anyone's property, not to take anything that doesn't belong to us, not to avail of ourselves of anything that's along the way, just to pass through. But the king of Edom says no, and Israel decided, okay, we'll just back off and find a route around this. Now, these stories, these episodes of Jewish history, have been subjected to midrashim, homilies, of a particular nature over the last 700 years, starting with the question, all Jewish lectures, Jewish studies into the scripture, we always try to, have a good question, and that makes possible our giving the answer that we wanted to give in the first place before anyone asked. And the question is, why do we need this story? It's what happened. Whatever happened hundreds or thousands of years ago, and it's deep in the past. And okay, maybe it was interesting in its own day, but why should the Torah, this one-time revelation where every single word must have meaning for us throughout all time? Why should it have these anecdotes from the past? And that's the opening to say, well, there's a parable here. There's a parable here. And this is, I want to explore here the drush of Rabbi Yaakov Yosef, Yaakov Yosef of Polnoya, the great Hasidic thinker, in his book Toldos Yaakov Yosef, on this. He, the man who seems to have pioneered this type of drush, of asking a lot of questions, including why should the Torah bother to tell us the story in the first place, was the Moshe Al-Sheikh. And we should know that Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polnoya, who was a direct student of the Baal Shem Tov, was already a very accomplished darshan, a very accomplished preacher, and the man who making homilies on scripture, and also a great scholar, before he became enthralled with Chassidus and went to be with the Baal Shem Tov. And we can see his virtuosity in his book, Toldos Yaakov Yosef, where he applies this method again and again. So I'll be giving sort of my summary, as usual, my summary with my own slant on how Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polnoya understands this particular story. So, how does Rabbi Yaakov Yosef of Polnoya understand this story? Edom is the Yetzer Hara, the evil instinct, as it's usually translated, but it doesn't really have to be evil things. They can be sort of natural urges, things that people naturally want, such as pride or wealth, which are not necessarily evil, but which distract us from what we're supposed to be doing in our lives here, which is to amass knowledge and worship God by getting to know God. Now, and Edom, of course, it sounds like Edom, red. Again, this red flag, this color that seems to indicate the evil instinct. And what the story, or what the parable is, that the sort of ordinary Jew is confronting, is challenging his Yetzer Hara head on and saying, I want to walk directly through you. I'm going to go, right up to you in your face, but I'll take the royal road. I won't swerve to the left. I won't swerve to the right. As Rabbi Yaakov Yosef explains it, as I understand it, to the right means I won't take on myself chumrot. I won't limit myself beyond whatever the Torah has limited me to. And to the left is not to have any ulterior motives. I will not study Torah so that I will be honored in the synagogue and people will say, oh, this guy is a great scholar, or to get some stipend or a cash prize. I'm going to go straight through with the purest intentions of worshiping God and nothing else. And he's going to do this right in the face of the Yetzer Hara. That's a dangerous thing, and people usually can't meet that challenge. And here in the Torah story, the king of Edom says, if you do that, I'm going to mobilize my entire army and meet you, and we'll have it out in the battlefield. So this is, and the end result was that Israel backed off and said, no, we don't. I didn't come here to fight with you. I asked to, go through on the royal road. No, if you don't want to let me go, we'll, work around it. So that's how he understands the story. That's the parable. That's the mashal. Now, what's the nimshal? And so the nimshal is this well-known Hasidic practice or ideology, which is to accept the frailties of ordinary human beings and try to gradually get them take advantage of them to get them onto the right path. So, for example, if someone wants to study Torah, and we see that they're really motivated because they want the honor, the distinction of being, scholars, which are always been, very much recognized and honored in the Jewish communities, honored, not really remunerated as they should be. Rav Kook used to say that we say in Birkat Hamazon, Rachaman hu farnasenu bechavod, that we, for our parnasa, we don't get money, we get kavod. And of course, you can't buy anything with that in the supermarket, but I'm getting off track. So if someone seems to be motivated in studying Torah because they want to make a name for themselves, they want to become famous as Torah scholars, they want to be invited to be the scholar in residence here and give the annual the keynote speech there and speak at this annual dinner and that annual dinner and be interviewed in all the important magazines and social media sites. Okay, that's your motivation, but we have the saying in Judaism, you're starting off on this track, on this path with ulterior motives, but if you continue, you'll start to love Torah study and studying the necessary, philosophy and science to have a knowledge of understanding of God that's not superficial and not based on false premises. And you'll start to do that for its own sake. You'll start to love learning for its own sake. You'll start to be challenged by the text that you study and motivated to do more. And little by little, whatever pride you get, that'll become secondary. As a matter of fact, with a lot of people, in the end, it becomes something that if they really succeed, it becomes something they want to, it's a nuisance. You want to sit down and study, and here you get another invitation to give the annual dinner to give the convocation or who knows what. So this is how Rabbi Yaakov Yosef understands this parable, and I think it's a very nice parable, and it really fits the really nice side of Hasidus, the way Hasidus was able to approach and bring in huge masses of people who knew that they were not going to be able to be 100% devoted at the start and be totally immersed in learning for the sake of learning. But if you don't denigrate them and don't put them off, because as it seems that they're beginning to do these things for other reasons, eventually they'll come around and realize the great intellectual rewards, the great personal satisfaction one gets from understanding a sugya, or from solving, or at least coming to a deeper understanding of a recondite matter. Thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.